Hello, we are continuing our tour of Ähtäri Zoo and we are arriving at the wild boar enclosure at the same time they are fed. And yes, this was not really planned, I just happened to come to this habitat while they were getting their food. Now wild boars was at one point extinct in Finland, but over the last few decades they have re-entered the country mainly from the east. But they are a very normal animal all over Europe and Asia. And they are of course the wild ancestor of the pig. And they are a quite large animal. You often don't think about it, but pigs are huge too, and of course that means wild pigs also would be very large. And they were getting some kind of grass, I think, but also they were getting porridge, and the keeper even specified that they were getting fish porridge. That's doesn't sound tasty to me, but then again I am not a boar. For a boar it's probably the tastiest thing ever. They are omnivores, so they eat basically everything. Yeah. This could also be a good time to talk about the fact that while Ähtäri Zoo was closed, a couple of animals were moved to other zoos because they didn't know the future of the park, so there are empty enclosures at some place in the park. I just filmed one of them, but for example they used to have forest reindeer at one point and they don't anymore because they sent them away when they were closed. This was a smaller enclosure on the side, it also had boar, but since they are smaller, I guess they are younger. And we are moving away from the boar enclosure. So yeah, there will of course be some empty habitats around the zoo because when the zoo was closed, some of the animals were moved to other zoos. That's what happens usually. And now we are at a habitat for the lynx, and it took a while for me to spot the lynx. I did spot it in the end. It also has two habitats because they're probably rotated. Or I don't know how many they have, they might just have one. Which is for a lynx fine. Lynxes are not that social, so one lynx could be what you need if you are not. Now we are in the spot the lynx game because it actually is in frame, but you probably can't see it because it's hidden so well. Oh well, you'll see it in the next clip. Yep, here we have it. It was hanging out right at the edge of the habitat, and it's mainly active in the night, so often if you see lynxes during the day, they are just hanging out in the zoo, resting. And now we are moving towards the bird area of the zoo. And outside the bird area, there was an outside aviary for the common raven. They are a large corvid, and usually think, well, corvids are pretty common, but ravens usually hang out in the forest and not in the cities, so you don't really see them that much as you see like crows, which you always see everywhere. And this is the bird house we are entering now, so they have an old classical bird house with a couple of birds. First one being the silver pheasant from Asia, Southeast Asia, I think. So it's actually a quite tropical bird. I think it's kind of the only really tropical animal they have. Then they had aviaries also in the birdhouse for various birds of prey. This was for the northern hawk owl, a very small owl. And the next habitat here was for the snowy owl, but it was nowhere to be seen. I saw it in another part of the park later, so I think it just had been moved. This isn't here because it was moved to another enclosure. And this was an Ural owl, another smaller owl species. And then we will now come to the common pheasant. This is of course the pheasant you see all over Europe, also in Finland. I haven't seen pheasants for years though, so I don't think they are as usual as they used to be. This was for an aviary for the great grey owl, and I couldn't see it. It's a very large bird, so I suspect it was off exhibit because it doesn't have that much hiding place, even though it has very good camouflage. This is a golden pheasant. Golden pheasant is another Asian pheasant. This one is from China, if I remember my pheasants correctly. And this is the backside of a pheasant. But we are moving to the next aviary for the common buzzard. They are a small, I think in most languages they will be called hawks. Though in English they are called buzzards, and the hawks are other animals with other birds of the same family. And then we are outside the birdhouse now, and this is the Eurasian eagle owl, the largest owl in Europe. And one of the largest owls in the world. There are a few larger, but the largest in Europe. And they are so big that you usually see them, you just have to look upwards because they are hanging somewhere there. This was a small cafeteria. And after this cafeteria actually got lost, so but the tour will continue the way it's intended to go. So we are next in the elk enclosure. We are seeking an audience with the king again, and well, this is not the greatest elk enclosure. I mean, it's big enough, but this is the king of the forest, and this doesn't look foresty. I think they'll do just fine in the big grass though, but still it doesn't feel foresty enough to me. The king himself, he was hiding in the grass. So yeah. It's fascinating how such a big animal as an elk can just hide in the grass if he wants to. But yes, I got lost, but this tour is reconstructed the way you're supposed to walk. So next you actually come to the snowy owl, its new enclosure, and there you see why it's so easy to spot. They can't really hide, they don't have the right camouflage, they are a winter animal, so if it's snow they can hide, otherwise you do see it, it's white. Okay, now it's time for badger, mushroom. Sorry about that. This is the European badger. I didn't thought I'd spot it because they are another nocturnal animal that you don't usually see during daytime. They tend to sleep during the day and be active during the night. They are actually pretty usual. Even though they're usual, most people have never seen one. I think this is the first time I've ever seen a badger. But Badgers you find in the wild all over the place and even close to where humans live. It's just that since they are nocturnal, you don't really see them. And they dig dens, so yeah, big holes they dig. So when you design an enclosure for badgers, you have to allow them to dig, but also make sure they can't dig themselves out. And we are now approaching the fox habitat for the red fox, which I didn't see. And here is the red fox habitat, but we are already seeing its neighbor. The red fox was probably hanging out in its backstage area. There was a gate in the back which goes to its off exhibit area, and it probably was just hanging there, or it was hiding somewhere, but I think it's possible that it just didn't want to come out today, so it was hanging in its backstage area. This is a Thorolds deer. Thorolds deer is a deer that comes from the Himalayas and the Tibetan plateau, so if you are keeping count of their Himalayan collection, you had the takin and the snow leopard and now the Thorolds deer. And actually there is still one animal left that comes from the Himalayas we haven't seen yet. And this will be the last animal I show in part 2. We are going to come to part 3 next, and I promise you it won't be as unbearable. This is in part 3 we will finally answer the question, are the pandas gone? We will see what happened to the giant panda enclosure and more. It probably won't be as long as this. So the Thorolds deer, I got a lot of good shots of, that's why its section is so long, but yeah, I like it. It looks pretty fabulous. See you in part 3.